Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us. Today is March 2nd. I wanted to ask you first about your thoughts as you reflect 1 year ago on what transpired.
Well, Neil, first of all, it was wrong, if I'm correct, it is just around the time I was interviewed by Fariza Hanif from Newsroom, exiting the polling station in Lenora. But those memories are still very fresh. For a matter of fact, the entire interview is still very fresh. But in reflection, I want to first of all thank you, the many other journalists, so many Guyanese, who made the results of this day that spoke to democracy and the freedom of the people in expressing their will. The work that you guys did, the way in which you defended today, a year ago, when the people expressed their will, the way you defended that will in standing up for democracy and ensuring we are here today to celebrate that day, I must once again say to you and all those Guyanese, especially our colleagues in the media, how grateful Guyana is, how grateful we are as Guyanese for the work that was done. But in reflection, today, a year ago, seemed to be, at this time, would have seemed to be a normal voting day. As you know, on March the 2nd, everything went well. It was after March the 2nd that we saw the plot that unfolded. So it is a very humbling moment today to reflect on March 2nd a year ago, when so many Guyanese came out and placed their confidence in me and the PPP to create a better future for them, to create a better future for Guyana, to create a better Guyana for all Guyanese. And that is humbling. I always reflect on many people who own nothing, who live in a very basic way, but who also dream, who also aspire. And the only way they saw realizing those dreams and aspirations was putting their confidence, their dreams, their aspirations in our hands, and trusting us, and trusting me, and the leaders we have in government today, to bring to reality their dreams and aspirations. That to me is humbling. That is the core, and it speaks to the core values that I take from March the 2nd, a year ago, when all Guyanese, so many Guyanese, came out and expressed their will. And even for Guyanese who came out and expressed their will for another political party, they did so as a feature of democracy. And we respect that, we honor that, because that is what democracy is about. So on March the 2nd itself, that freedom to express the will was there. It is after that that we saw the plot that unfolded to try to steal that freedom, to try to steal that democracy. So in reflection today, a year ago is a day that will forever be in the history books of our country. It's a day in which, well, not in which, a day which gave so many Guyanese the opportunity to mark their name in history, to recommit themselves to the features of democracy, true freedom and liberty. So in reflection, it is a very humbling day. I woke up this morning and, well, I went to bed thinking about today. And I woke up in detailed reflection as to what transpired and the pain and anguish that came with the aftermath of March the 2nd. And in reflection, we have to be more than thankful for the Guyanese of all walks from all walks of life, different political persuasion, different ethnic group, different religious group, who came together, who spoke out in defense of democracy.
In that 5 months that ensued, I mean, it was an excruciating time. Is there a moment that stood out for you that was perhaps, if I could say, the most chilling of what was actually taking place?
Well, you would know, you were there all night. I remember your face, it was battered from lack of sleep.
March 6th.
Yes, we were all there at, I think, 3 in the morning when I did my last interview that morning. That was after the flash drive issue. And I recall, I stayed there a few nights. I recall that on the morning when the plot was unfolded, and Mingo was trying to make a declaration, of course, a false declaration. I looked around and the many faces from the media, from the international community, Guyanese, and it was total shock. They were all faces of sorrow at that moment. If it was not for social media and the speed at which information was disseminated, it would have been a different story today. But I looked there, and that was a moment that stood out. It was a moment of, we can't believe this is happening. I remember the international community. I remember some old political personnel in tears saying they would never have imagined a day like this returning to our country. I remember the loss for words from many individuals. I remember a few leaders in the private sector dropping on the floor in disbelief. I remember members from the Bar Association very animated as to what was taking place. And they all had their voices. But at the same time, I saw in all the faces an immediate reaction to the shock, that we're not going to allow it to happen. And this morning, when I looked at social media and saw the hundreds of young people who are posting, reposting from March the 2nd, I felt a sense of pride that so many young people experienced that. But more than that, they took it on their own to play a role to ensure that the plot never won at the end of the day. And in my heart, I'm convinced that those who saw it firsthand, this new generation of Guyanese, that they would never allow it to happen again.
Mr. President, how do we move past that then? At this moment, those who were accused of carrying out this plot are still in place at the Elections Commission 1 year after those elections. How do you, in your position, try to change it?
Well, you know, the commission is a separate authority, it's independent. And good sense must prevail. I was hoping that these people would do the honorable thing and just step aside. It didn't happen. But it is clear, all of Guyana, if you take a poll, will say to you, we cannot continue with persons within the Secretariat who are bent on mischief, who are part of a plot to derail democracy. And it is concerning. It is concerning that we still have those persons there. But as you rightfully said, we are hoping that good sense will prevail. And as we approach another elections, local government elections, the right thing will be done. The Secretariat will be truly manned by professionals. And in moving forward, we have already spoken to the need for electoral reforms with stiff penalties and great clarity on the process and the penalties that are required to safeguard democracy. And that is something that we are moving ahead with aggressively. And all stakeholders should support, because we all want a stronger system. So, in moving ahead, we have to have a secretariat that is truly independent in the Elections Commission, one that is professional, and one that acts in the interests of Guyana and democracy.
What areas of clarity in particular you would like to see with the electoral process when you reflect on what happened during that time?
I think, for me, you have to have a system with various checks and balances. One, it is clear how devious people can manipulate the SOPs, try to manipulate the SOPs. And it's clear how political parties, some of them, would hide from their SOPs. So to solve this, I think at every region, every polling station, from the time the SOP, we live in a technological era. From the time the SOP is posted, it must also be posted to a public platform. All the media houses should get it at the same time. And it's published instantaneously, so the entire country sees it. That will solve all the delays and the manipulations that we saw Mingo tried. Then we must have the decorations in the regions themselves. You can't bring Region 4 decoration. It was deliberate, I think, to bring it under the control of those who had a devious plan in the Secretariat at the Ashman building. Region 4 is a large region. I think you have to have sub-regions in terms of the East Coast and East Bank, and those decorations must be done in those areas, in addition to the posting of the SOPs. Then there must be strong penalties. So election officials are aware that if they act in an unprofessional manner, that they will be dealt with in accordance with the law. Very strong penalties.
And you said these new ideas that you're thinking of, you want to put that in law?
Yes, that has to be part of the electoral reform. Then we also have to ensure that the recruitment process is fair. The recruitment process is free from political interference, and the recruitment process itself has to have some sort of independence. So those are things that are essential and part of the change that is required.
Now, Mr. President, how do you get across the aisle to the opposition? Because almost half of those who voted did not vote for you. How do you win them over, or at least try to find common ground?
Neil, I've made it very clear from the inception that my intention, first of all, let me step back, that I'm truly humbled and grateful for those who voted for me and the PPP, to our supporters who did such a wonderful job, and I'm thankful for their support. But I'm also responsible for every single Guyanese. And I've made it very clear that my government is working towards one Guyana, one future, a common agenda in which all Guyanese will benefit and must benefit. And I've made this clear from the campaign, and this is the agenda we're moving forward with. Now, I've seen persons who claim to be leaders trying to separate people, trying to use race as a tool of separation. That is why I've decided that I am going to work directly in every community. I'm going to engage the people at the grassroots directly in every community. I'm going to walk the road with those people in the communities. I'm going to listen to their concerns. I'm going to listen to their aspirations. And we as a government, we're going to respond to those people. We have to create a direct relationship between the government and the people of this country. A direct relationship. There must be no interlocker. The relationship between the government and the people does not require an interlocker. We're going to lead that by working directly on the ground. That is not to say that we will not engage at other levels. But I've made it very clear. Such engagement must be respectful. Such engagement must be in recognition of the legitimacy of the parties to the engagement. And that is a hurdle we have to cross at that level. But that is not a hurdle that will separate us from reaching the masses in every single community, from creating a direct link. And that is the approach I think is critical. And over the last few months, I've seen a new mood emerging, a new leadership, a new set of leaders, a new vibrancy at the grassroots level that shares this agenda and that want to embrace this agenda and that are embracing this agenda. We're using a model, the corridor of unity, as a model of the approach we're going to take. I think this is critical, and this is one way in which I'm taking direct leadership in creating this One Guyana.
People said your One Guyana Commission is, well, it has been criticized as potentially becoming another bureaucratic process, that you have an ERC which should be taking care of issues like the one your One Guyana Commission hopes to the work that it hopes to carry out. How do you respond to that?
I'm not going to respond to the work of the ERC. I've said on previous occasion how I felt. Just go back to our recent history, our elections, and you'll see those who took a principal position. It is not up to one body to create a One Guyana. We all have to want a One Guyana. And I have a great responsibility in creating that environment. And let us see. I always say, let us put it to the test. Let us put it to the test. So let us put the One Guyana Commission to the test. You will see the results. We will all see the results. But there is a deliberate attempt. There is a deliberate attempt to create from the inception, even before the commission is operationalized, a narrative that is negative. And what is important is for us to go behind that narrative, to examine that narrative, to see who are the intellectual authors behind that narrative. And you will see exactly what I'm talking about. There is a group that see this One Guyana as a hindrance to the political mischief they're accustomed to. It won't happen.
Mr. President, 5 months on, like you said, your government has been busy on the ground. Ministers are in communities quite often. Is that expected to continue throughout your term?
With greater aggression. Not only continue, but with greater aggression. I have made it very clear that this is a government that will be grounded in the grassroots.
And how do you get your ministers to, not that they aren't, but how do you get your ministers to operate according to the values that you have set out for your government?
Well, we operate as a team. These values are not just created. They're discussed, they're shared, ownership is created, and they know too that their performance is assessed by the values in which we are promoting our government. And I must say that the cabinet has been doing a great job at pushing this agenda forward. I've seen ministers in every single community. I've heard comments from APNU, PNC members that our government has visited communities that are conceived to be PNC stronghold more than they visited when they're in government in just less than 5 months. Now, it is important in policy making, very important in policy making, that the policymakers themselves are connected with the problem. So one of the great benefit of members of the cabinet being on the ground is that they understand the problem from the grassroots level itself. They're connected with the issues, and it helps us to develop better policies, more guided policies that are more connected to the people. And that is why you're seeing some of the announcements and measures we're taking have such a great connection with the people. Many persons comment on the budget is that they feel as if the measure was talking to them. Those who are building their homes, for example, the construction sector. Very soon, we'll be turning the sod for a local hotel, local private sector participation. These are opportunities that we are unlocking. The local content policy. I receive regional comments from leading personalities on our local content policy, and they were very encouraging and supportive, and more importantly, appreciative of the direction government is going and the strength in which we are placing in the local content policy. It is not just a local content policy, it is a local content policy that will be backed by legislative input, legislative powers. So, what we've seen and what we have created and we are trying to continue to create is an environment in which all segments of the society feel connected to what we're doing and the way forward. It's very important for Guyanese to understand where we're going. So, Neil, the media too has an important role in creating this one Guyana. My hope is that the media can spend some time every day in promoting Guyana, who we are as Guyanese. And all of this helped to change the mindset. All of this helped to change the mindset. So it's very key and important for us to work on a common agenda, understand what that agenda is, if we are to truly, and we will, realize a Guyana in which all of us are united with a common vision.
So to take you back to that, Mr. President, do you have any sort of checks and balance to ensure that none of your ministers feel they're up there and people are down here and they don't meet those needs? Do you have like a rule book to say you shouldn't do that or you should do this?
We have very frank discussions in the cabinet. We have very frank bilaterals. And from time to time, we discuss areas in which we think things could have been done a different way. And my style of leadership is to give everyone an opportunity to have their input heard. And then we have an evaluation. So there has been constant feedback, constant analysis. Even myself, every few days I take a few moments to reflect on key areas that we would have crossed, that I would have crossed as president, and then to internalize whether it could have been done differently. I have few persons who I constantly refer to as a matter, as a feature of check and balance mechanism. And Neil, my number has not changed. So you can imagine, during the campaign, all of Guyana had my number. And I am not short of advice daily. I am not short of recommendations daily. And I take time, most times between 1 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. in the morning, to go through messages, to look at recommendations, to look at how people feel. It's important to understand how people feel. For example, if I'm in State House and the generator comes on when there's blackout, then you may be under the false impression that we're on the 24-hour power supply. But because of the way we are state connected, we know the inherited problems at GPL, and we know the difficulties people are having on the East Coast. And the Vice President has convened in the last week and a half a number of meetings with GPL to fix it. The low voltage, to fix it. We are not under any illusion that everything is bright and beautiful and perfect. We are working with direct contact with communities and on the ground. That is why I can pick up the phone and I can call the NDC in any country, any part of the country, and say to them that these matters are of concern. What is it you're doing? Because it's important that leaders stay connected. There are two things, for example, I've seen over the last few weeks that I'm hoping to engage on, that people may classify as soft issues. But to me, they're critical if we are to create stronger communities. And that is the role of the family. I'm seeing the disintegration. I'm seeing the loss of values sometimes. And it's important that we have in every single community stronger families. Stronger families lead to stronger communities. We must have more support mechanism within the family themselves. I mean, COVID-19 is not doing us any good. There's very little social interaction for children. So one of the things that we want to do is to foster more cohesive, stronger families that will lead to the establishment of stronger communities. And we're looking at investing in small things but important. Little play fields, green areas in which people can come out and exercise and walk and recreate that community life. Too many children are locked behind doors on video games and computer games, and they're not being exposed to social interaction. There's a lot of studies out there on this now. How do we get back our children to be out in the communities interacting, playing with children in the neighborhood, climbing a guava tree, picking guavas, sharing, coming together, eating together in a community, playing together. As a society, we cannot lose these things. These are important features of the society that creates an enabling environment for interaction and cohesiveness. If at a very young age, we're exposed to each other. And these are things we have to address. People think these are the soft issues that may not be important. They're critical issues for the advancement of society. It leads to a direct interaction with features of mental health issues. That is why in the budget, we have brought it on the front burner, issues of mental health, reproductive health, and prevention of cruelty against animals. A maturing society, a developed society, must be able to address these issues, must be able to speak to these issues. So I believe that an important part in this advancement is the development of stronger families that lead to stronger communities, and for us to find a way. And parents have to understand this situation that COVID has created has already damaged a lot of what should be normalized behavior of children. We have to get our children out there to interact with each other, grow together as Guyanese, understanding different backgrounds, different culture, visiting each other on Eid, on Pago, on Christmas. That is the culture. That is the environment. What is meant to be a Rastafarian. That is our culture. I see more, and I'm not critical of it, maybe it's important. I see more emphasis placed on Halloween parties than our old local traditions that make us who we are as Guyanese. I've already asked the Minister of Education to examine the curriculum and the curricula of private institutions We cannot have Guyanese students going to private schools and you're not learning Guyanese history. You're not learning things that are related to Guyana. Very important in creating that nationalistic, patriotic front, in blossoming Guyana and infusing a future in which all our children could be integrated.
To do all of that, we obviously have to overcome the pandemic. By the end of this month, we were expected to get 200,000 COVID-19 vaccines. Can you talk to me about how you see that rolling out over the next coming weeks and months?
Well, first of all, Neil, we have made it very clear that we are sparing no effort or resources in having all our people vaccinated. And we are targeting to have this done before the end of the year. So we have given the Ministry of Health all the support in building a network, in building a unit that would be dedicated to this. And they have done so. They have strengthened this unit. So we will see, we are in a position to have national wide-scale rollout. The Minister of Health has advised that we're in a state of readiness, and we have categories that we have already outlined in terms of priority in getting the vaccines. It has to be done regionally and with great equity, and ensuring that all Guyanese are treated are treated in a fair manner. So we have started this process. We have approached every single provider because we want to get ahead of this. We have to get our people vaccinated. We have to get our economy up and running again. We have to be ready and open to do business. Right?
Do you have an idea of how much it will cost to get everyone vaccinated by the end of this year?
Well, one of the great difficulties is finalizing that cost. Each vaccine have different costs. The cost of transportation because of COVID itself is tremendous. But notwithstanding the costs, we have to get it. Our people deserve it, and it's an investment that is critical to keep people safe. Not necessary, but let me be very clear. Vaccination is not the end of the road. We still have to have protocols and guidelines. We still have to have protocols and guidelines.
Do you have feedback that there's a great pushback against acceptance of vaccines from the population?
I don't think there is. There was a study that was done on hesitancy. What we have garnered from those studies and what I've been advised by the Minister of Health and the technical team is that there is greater need for education. There is greater need for education on the vaccines, and that is what they're targeting. Ensuring there's enough information out there, ensuring that our population is educated and they have the information set in terms of the vaccines.
Mr. President, I want to end where we started. You announced this Order of Democracy last evening. Why that, and why not give awards in our set of awards already? Why did you feel this need to create this special award?
If it was not for the struggle for democracy, we would not have been here today, even to discuss awards. So I think it was significant for this generation and future generations to understand that there will be, in law, following the process, an order specifically designed to celebrate those who champion democracy and ensure Guyana remain democratic, and for those who would continue to contribute to democracy and advancement of democracy in the future. I think it is specific enough, it was a specific enough event that warranted such an award. And that is why we developed it.
And are you the one choosing who you will award, or will it go through that regular awards process?
No, this, I think persons have chosen themselves already based on the work that was done. But of course, it will be a consultative process. But I think I don't have to, if you go back in history, you'll see all those who define themselves in that period. And you don't have to be a supporter of the PPP. There are persons who were part of other political entities. There were persons who were never supporters of the PPP, but they supported democracy. They supported what was right, and they fought for the will of the people. And they must be recognized for that.
Mr. President, it took 5 months for you to be sworn in, from March 2nd when these elections were held to August 2nd. Have you been able to put your hands on what it is that changed that particular day when this flurry of events took place and you became president?
I think it was the collective efforts of so many people that led to the writing that our international partners, US, UK, EU, Canada, who CARICOM, the OAS, the world was behind what was right. Guyana was behind what was right. And it was only time before the games of the oppressors came to an end. And that is why I'm so humbled. This was the collective effort of many. It was the strength of character of many. And that is why today is so significant. And the 5 months so significant for us. And that is why I have decided to have this order of democracy, because of the significance of the struggle, the significance of this period. This is a period all of us, we can't reflect on proudly. But sadly, it is now part of our history. Generations to come will read about it. Generations to come will go and look at Neil Mark's documentary, will look at Frederick Kissoon's writings, will look at what different political actors. Similarly, generations to come will examine the conduct of who caused this, will examine the role of different players in this. And time is the greatest judge of events and things. But the time that it took for us to be in office is a tower of strength in us using our time in office for the upliftment and betterment of all Guyanese.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.